Welcome everyone to the second part of this interview with the voice of Battlefield, Daskro. And today we are going to get into how he is the voice of Battlefield, why he got into commentating, a little bit more on his competitive gameplay, and what he thinks about the future for Battlefield 4 competitive gaming and how it can grow. I hope you enjoyed the first part of this interview. If you didn't see the first part, I'll put a link on the screen here. And just like the first part, this series I'm doing, Inside the Mind of a Pro Player, all of proceeds are being donated from this video to the MDA, the National Muscular Dystrophy Association. If you want to know why they're being donated, I will put a link to the original video in which I explain why I'm donating all the proceeds from this series to the MDA. But without further ado, let's hop back into the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Most of us in the Battlefield 4 community know you for your hard work and putting together, basically you are the voice of the competitive scene. How did you get into becoming the voice of Battlefield? What made you start uploading all the competitive gameplay and commentating on them?
As I mentioned before, I started playing competitive Battlefield in 1942, in the game Battlefield 1942. That was like back in 2003. We actually played in scrims and matches during the Battlefield 1942 demo. It wasn't a beta back then. It was a demo. Came in PC Gamer, the magazine, and you actually had a disc you put in. And it was me and my younger brother and a few of the other local guys. I grew up in Kansas City, and that's where we started on. We had a gaming team at the time called 117th, which was just a name that we made up. And we began playing organized competitive Battlefield. We had no idea what we were doing. Yeah, sure. We had a bunch of Counter-Strike experience. I think at the time we were a Cal main team, which basically means that you weren't terrible, but you weren't fantastic. And we started playing and joined the Cal Open League for Battlefield 1942. And in season one, ended up getting into the playoffs. We didn't win the whole thing, but we got into the playoffs, and that was a big deal. As we continued to play, and take in mind, this was all with just local guys that are our high school friends and things like that. We kind of realized that we actually may have a lot more talent than we thought we did. And as time progressed, the best players on that team, including myself, my younger brother, and a few of our friends, joined up some of the big heavyweights of the Battlefield scene. In this case, most of us joined Team Demise, and then a few of the other guys joined Team EFS or Final Stand. We played with these various teams for a while. There was some rivalries, but we a lot of us eventually got into the one team that none of us joined originally, which is Team 20ID. For those that don't know, and I don't talk about this often, but I'll talk about it here, 20ID is just simply known as 20ID. And we had a name change in 2005, 2006, because in BF2 days, there's a lot of corporate sponsors. We wanted to get that corporate money because it allowed us to pay for things like going to events and things like that. 20ID was not originally known as 20ID. 20ID was actually a different name. It was 20-inch. You can finish beyond that. 20-inch something. You get it.
And we all get that.
and it was because the leaders of the team were extremely cocky, and they were kind of assholes to people, but they were really damn good. And I stayed with 20ID from 2004, 2005, all the way to when I stopped playing. In fact, 20ID became, towards the end of Battlefield 1942, all the way through 2142, the #1 Battlefield team in North America. We traveled around the United States to play in events and won most of them. We were sponsored by a number of big companies at the time, like Xfire and ATI, which have both sort of gone under. Not to do with us. I still have a bunch of my old original jerseys for it. And after BF 142, I actually took over the entire organization. I became team leader and sort of the CEO of the team, and I did it because no one else really wanted to do it, and I didn't want to see this team that I'd put years of effort into, building and being a part of, just to go by the wayside. I had seen too many other Battlefield teams go down that route. And so I took over operations, started in Bad Company 2, and led the team in Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 and a few smaller non-Battlefield games, most notably World in Conflict. And unfortunately, even though that I'm a good tanker, I'm not that good of an in-game leader. I mean, I'm better than most, but what's the difference between a professional football coach and a professional football coach that has a half a dozen Super Bowl rings? The difference is actually quite large when you're playing on that level of competition. Me being just good at it isn't enough, and unfortunately, as time progressed, and I got out of college and got a full-time job, I couldn't juggle all of it. I couldn't run all the HR aspects of the team and do in-game leadership and play on my A game all at the same time. And 20ID really never got or didn't have the kind of successes that it did in previous Battlefield games, and that's all on me, and I accept that. I wish it would have been different, and I made a lot of mistakes. I made a tremendous amount of mistakes in running the organization, and I made some good calls, and I made a lot of bad calls. And in that respect, it was very much a learning experience of how do you go about creating a successful top esports team. And as this all took place, I got worn out. I got worn out because we kept on losing, and you only tell your teammates so much before they realize that you're just trying to pep talk them for them to keep on playing, and they don't want to play anymore. And this is not an NFL game where everyone's making 6-7 figures. This is all volunteers, all people that are there because they want to play, they want to have fun. And when you cease to provide them a venue in which they're having fun, they will no longer play for you. And eventually, it came to a point where I just had to throw in the towel and said, guys, I can't lead you guys anymore. I want you guys to go to other teams. And most of the players for my team BF3 ended up going to Nexus, and I encouraged that, and I wanted them to go, because in the end, if they're not having fun, then I'm not doing my job. I want them to be successful in whatever team that they're a part of, because without them, I have no team. But at the same time,
that kind of led you into more of the becoming the commentator of the games.
Well, what's interesting about it is that I remember when Battlefield 3 came out, about 6-7 months before it came out, I remember how I was planning, and I was planning tremendously. I'm a big planner. I like having a certain schedule. I like having the schedule. No schedule goes to plan. It requires flexibility. But I will tell you, I spent many a nights thinking about, how am I going to make 2080 a better team? How am I going to recruit the right players? How am I going to promote the team so that it gets the kind of exposure it needs to get? How am I going to do this? And I drafted up a very extensive marketing proposal for sponsors and things like that, where we would basically create various types of media content as an element of the team in order to get sponsors and to facilitate the team in their activities, which is playing matches and things like that.
That's pretty interesting.
Unfortunately, only a fraction of that actually was executed, because the best laid plans are not, they don't happen the way you want them to happen. I had an assumption that in Battlefield 3, I was not going to be the in-game tactical leader and make all the critical HR decisions about who's going to be starting, who's not going to be starting. I had some people that I thought were going to be sort of my coaches, if you will, and there were some life events that came up with a few of them that where they couldn't play, and there were a few of them that just simply didn't want to play because they didn't like Battlefield 3. And so I had to step in and do all that all over again, just like I did in BC2, and it wasn't a success. We didn't last that long, only 4 or 5 months before the whole team collapsed. And I was left in a position which I was extremely distraught. I spent all this time before Battlefield 3 even came out, planning for this, hoping for it to be something big. And what's funny is that I actually tried to execute that media plan that I described, and here was one of the elements of it. I wanted to identify an individual on the team for each of the main types of roles and have them do different types of instruction videos describing on how to do basic things in the given role they do. A helicopter pilot describing on how to maneuver, or a tank pilot or tank driver talking about how to shoot around the arc, a jet pilot talking about how to engage in dogfights. And because of competitive Battlefield 3 and the map loadout, we didn't really have many jet pilots. We had one jet pilot, Gats, who was from Battlefield 142, a great jet pilot, but unfortunately, most matches didn't have jets in them. And Gats wasn't that interested in doing esports or doing kind of YouTube videos, and so I actually began going through all the Battlefield 3 and Battlefield Bad Company 2 YouTubers and identifying potential jet pilots. The one person that I came up with who actually responded to my request, and there was a few people that I sent messages to, some of which are still active Battlefield guys, and they actually know me now. I don't think they even know that I sent them a message 4 plus years ago about this. But the one guy that responded to it who was interested was Diego Rod from Elite Gamer Bros. And you may not remember him, but he still has a YouTube channel. He's not active anymore. Unfortunately, his father contracted cancer, and he's been helping his father, fight that battle.
Shame to hear that.
But he was interested, and at the time, I think he had like 20,000 subscribers, and he said, yeah, because what was the value proposition? The value proposition was he could have 20 ID tags that he could wear, giving him street cred, and we'd let him play in matches. And I'm being 100% serious. I wanted him to play because he wasn't bad. And in exchange, he would help us create YouTube content to get the 2080 brand out. And there are teams that are doing that right now a great example of that is Jack Frags. Jack Frags has been doing that with Exertus and now their new team, for the last few years. And I'm not saying Jack Frags isn't a bad player. He's actually a fantastic player, but he'll never be a starter for them. He's going to be a backup player. That's okay.
It's interesting.
There's a mutual benefit there. There's nothing wrong with that. But that whole relationship with Diego didn't go through. I mean, because again, I was being pushed in every direction. I couldn't do it. And after the team collapsed, I went through about a month or so of a lull, and I'll tell you, I was genuinely depressed about it because you put all this effort into this thing, and it all fails. And you kind of don't even want to play anymore. Kind of don't even want to do anything.
Yeah, I've had life experience. I can certainly relate to that. But let's move on to here.
Oh, but I got a personal story though. So Diego Rod at the about a month or so later messaged me out of the blue and says, "Hey, I'm competing in this 8v8 YouTube Pub Stars event. Would you be interested in playing on my team?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I'll play. That sounds like fun. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'll do something with it." And it was an 8v8 event with all the various YouTube personalities out there, including many that are still active today. And it was, I don't forget who was all on my team, but on the other team, it was Matimio, Rival X Factor, Level Cap, Mongol FPS was on my team, Jack Frags was on my team, Epona was on my team, I want to say Squirrel Nuts was on the air team, and I'm blanking on who else was in the air team. But I'd have to look at the videos. Doesn't matter.
Sounds like a nasty setup there.
Oh yeah, and
pretty good game.
I viewed it as a way for me to sort of maybe showcase what it means to be playing competitive. Because it's one thing when you get 8 people all together that are pubbing in a match, but if you can apply tactics and strategies to their core gameplay mechanics that they know how to execute on, you can destroy anyone. And so I took it really serious, and Diego Rod and myself tried really, really hard to actually like do practices with our teammates, describe basic tactics and strategies and why it's important to hold things and do certain things. Because remember, even though that my team was not that successful in BF3, I still understood very, very well all the various dynamics of the maps, what assets were more important than others in keeping up, and timing and other things around those lines. And not surprisingly, our team dominated. We won every map with the exception of the last map, and the last map was, I think, week 5. So we won 4 out of 5 maps. That's pretty damn good.
That's legit against a pretty darn stacked team. It
was, and I began posting those videos, and I got a tremendous amount of subscribers simply because all these other guys were also posting my channel in their descriptions and stuff, and that got me started. And that's sort of where it all began with the YouTube content.
The beginning of Daskro.
Yeah.
So, I love watching your YouTube commentaries with the competitive stuff, and there's always some mumblings going on out in the cyber world here. It's undeniable that Battlefield 4 has had some problems from the start. What do you think the problems in Battlefield 4 have contributed to the competitive world? Has it diminished it, or do you notice a difference? I know you talked about, you used to have a lot of corporate sponsorship, and I just don't really see that anymore in the competitive world. Is this a result of that?
So the lack of corporate sponsorship, it's actually an interesting story, and I'm not going to go too much into it only because it's a long one, but that corporate sponsorship that I described came and went along with sort of the first generation of the first epoch, if you will, of North American esports. That was the back in the day of the CPL days, Cyber Athlete Professional League days. When CPL went bankrupt, and when CGS, Championship Gaming Series, which was a DirecTV, Best Buy, Mountain Dew event, went bankrupt, all the money, all the corporate sponsors went away, and it's never come back. Only with Dota 2 and League of Legends, and to a lesser extent StarCraft, have we start to see even a fraction of that money come back. But it's not North American centric anymore. It's much more global in nature. Now, the only exception to that is on the console world. So next gen consoles have certainly, and current gen, have had a tremendous amount of impact. But if you ever go to an MLG or a UMG and you've been to a CPL, it doesn't even compare. MLG and UMG try really hard to make it look like that they have a big event with a big audience and sort of this very organic feel to it. And I'm sorry I'm going off a tangent here, but I want to talk about this.
It's a good subject.
But and so they have really high production value, and that's great, but it's not an organic feel to it, because they never will pan the camera around to the entire event, because they know that it will ruin the illusion that it's actually a big, well-attended event. They actually are all quite small, and it's sad. It saddens me, because I look back at the CPL days in 05, 04, where you had, no kidding, 3,000 people at a BYOC at the event. That's huge. You don't get those kind of numbers. Now, granted, the stream numbers make up for that, and I'm not trying to diminish what UMG and MLG have done. They've certainly shown that they can be a viable business model, and I think that's so important, because all the production in the world doesn't get you anywhere if it can't be sustainable. But back to the sort of the original question about Battlefield 4 and dynamics of what happened. I philosophically believe that in order to have a successful esports game, regardless if it's a first-person shooter or a real-time strategy game or a MOBA or whatever, it has to have core gameplay dynamics that are intuitive, that are fair, and that are balanced. And in order to have that, you got to have a game that isn't buggy and it doesn't have issues and it has a certain amount of intuitiveness to it, so that you don't question the outcomes that you result from the actions that you take. And unfortunately, Battlefield 4, the first few months, and even to a lesser extent now, has had issues that have put those kinds of issues into light, and allowed us to ask the question of can this be improved, and if so, what needs to be done with it? And
I think that last sentence you said, where you said question the outcome of pretty much like every death you have in the game, I think that pretty much sums it up, honestly.
yes, and so if Battlefield 4 didn't have those sort of issues that often have been described ad nauseum and discussed, would it had a better esports launch? Most certainly. Most certainly.
Do you think if they fix those issues, will it come back, or is it too far gone at this point? Has it lost too many of the core competitive people?
Well, so this is that's sort of a loaded question, and I'll explain why I think it's loaded. I philosophically believe that competitive gaming is not about top players and their choice as to whether or not they decide to play this game as an esport or that game as an esport. I really don't care about what choices they make in terms of what games they play, because having been on top competitive gaming teams in the past and seen the choices and the actions that these players take, many of them are opportunists. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory fashion, but what I am saying is that they will choose, if they are tremendously successful at every game they play in, and they can easily transition from one game to the next, they will make a transition to a game in which they think they have the best chances of reaching the maximum payout. And
I see.
And that is, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're trying to make money or are living off of this. At the same time, when I think back to CPL, those 3,000 people that showed up in Dallas to play Counter-Strike, those were not 3,000 pro players. Those were 3,000 players that said, I love playing Counter-Strike so much. I love playing organized Counter-Strike so much that I want to attend CPL on my own dime, without any corporate sponsors, without any sponsors from any teams, because I want to experience this unique, once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience of going to a CPL, playing in the BYOC. Because remember, when you play the BYOC, you have a chance to play in the finals, because they always let a certain number of BYOC teams into the championship
wild cards.
Playoffs, the wild cards. You have a chance of competing against the top dogs. The reason why those 3,000 people showed up is because they had that passion for it, which is the same reason why, as opposed to having an invite league and a main league, Counter-Strike, in my opinion, is a great example of this, of why it was so successful in its heyday. You had Cal Open, you had Cal Main, you had Cal Intermediate, you had Cal Invite, and then you had like Cal Pro. You had basically 5 different leagues. Or to use a more modern example, look at StarCraft 2's ladder system. You have top 200. You have Masters. You have what's the next one? Diamond. Then you have Platinum. Then you have Silver. Or then you have Gold. Then you have Silver. Then you have Bronze. Right. That tiered system is so important, because it not only means that you have a lot of people playing the games, which is at its core what actually brings the sponsors in. Sponsors don't care whether you have someone that is a, let's just say, a LeBron James good, who is a great basketball player in today, versus a Michael Jordan good, who is arguably the best basketball player who's ever lived. Sponsors don't care about that difference. They're more concerned about numbers. They want to see
results. It's all about the
results. They want to see a lot of people playing the game, watching the game, enjoying the game. And that's why in my opinion, for Battlefield to be successful, you have to take the best elements that make Battlefield popular among the public gaming community as a whole, and showcase to them the best elements that make organized competitive Battlefield fun, which in my mind is about utilizing great teamwork, playing the objective. When you are on in-game comms with a bunch of other dudes, boy, it gets fun. It gets so fun because everyone's doing their job. And even if, and this is more on Battlefield than in other games, even if you're not that good of a shot, even if you only can use the mortar with the support class, you can still add value to, you can still have an impact, a positive impact for your team. You can still contribute to it. And for the larger 32 vs 32 battles, you don't have, even if you have a bunch of great guys that are good, that are fantastic shots, there's so many people on the battlefield that there's a numbers game dynamic of it that becomes a lot more strategic in nature.
Only takes one more guy to cap a flag.
Yes, exactly. And to me, while that's not the traditional competitive Battlefield that I'm used to playing, I view that as very much of a gateway drug to get people interested in playing organized competitive matches. And so that eventually they'll say, hey, you know, I love the 32-32 stuff, but I want to try something small. I want to try a 12v12, a 10v10, try a 5v5. Because once you get people interested in doing it, again, this is my belief, they will not want to go back to playing pubs. I view that they will view this as the logical path forward that they will take, because it's changing the dynamic of about I play pubs because I want to get ranked 110. It's instead, I want to play Battlefield because I want to experience these super close matches against competent opponents that are you know, less than 5 ticket difference, and have these Battlefield moments and experience them in a volume that is an order of magnitude more so than what you'd experience in pubs. And that's why I started playing competitive and never stopped, is because playing pubs is not the same. I mean, if you're about getting drunk, you'll hit that hard liquor up. You're not going to hit that booze up, because that's what.
So
that's
competitive gaming is the hard liquor of Battlefield. Is that the tagline
yeah,
for this?
if getting drunk is the metric of having fun, and I'm not advocating for. I mean, so
don't go out and get drunk, everyone.
Be responsible,
just play
guys.
Battlefield.
but I'm telling you, if you're about having fun, competitive Battlefield's where it's at, because the camaraderie that you create and that you have with your teammates. It's not just about your friends in your battle. I'm talking about both new and old teammates. Is something that's genuine. And I'll tell you, that 28E team that I end up leading, that I played in, and then I end up leading the team and running the entire organization. I will tell you that in Battlefield 1942, they were our arch enemies when I was in Team Demise. I hated them back then. I despised them, and yet years later, I'm not only on the team that I hated, I'm now leading the team that I'm hating.
You were the boss.
With the same players that I actually hated, you know, back then. Because in the end, competitive gaming is about camaraderie, both with your teammates and with your adversaries. You will, if you keep on playing the games that you're playing with the same sort of crew, you end up playing with all of them. You end up, even though that they may be your enemies in the game, you end up establishing these friendships that transcend. That, to me, that is just so that's so moving, and that's what drives me to do the videos that I do and try to emphasize, get people interested in this kind of stuff, because I want people to have that same kind of experience that I have and continue to have. That's what I think makes it so powerful.
That's pretty cool. Now let's wrap this up here. Where do we see Daskro Gaming in the future? What's coming for you in the future of your channel?
Well, for many that have watched my channel recently, I have sort of taken it down a notch compared to the sort of volume of content I've done in the past. A lot of that has to do with my work, my 9-to-5 job, and I know that a lot of people ask, well, what do you do for a living, Daskro? And I don't talk about it.
You work for the CIA. We all know Daskro.
It's actually not that big of a secret, but I'm on principle. I try not to talk about it in any kind of YouTube or Twitch video or recording or anything around those lines. But I'll tell you, if you actually get involved with any of the things that I'm involved in terms of the competitive gaming stuff, everyone knows what I do for a living. Everyone knows about it. It is not a big secret. It's a really bad secret, but it's one that
you make it sound like it's this really bad thing you do for a living.
Well, yeah, some people may think it is a bad thing to do for a living, but I don't want to create any kind of appearance of impropriety, and I don't work for EA, just saying. But
you're not
game
getting paid?
company. Yeah. No, I am. No, I was part of that Ronku program, and I did get paid for that, but I did disclose it in the videos. But future for Daskro stuff. I've been working a lot with Low BF. I really believe in what they're doing because they are trying to recreate a lot of the same elements of why Cal and CPL were successful from a tiered ladder system in creating genuine moments for people. I think that's what's so compelling, which is why I'm doing a whole lot more live streaming nowadays, mostly on Low BF for their events, because I believe in what they're doing, and I think that
somebody's got to do that. Somebody's got to put that stuff on. It's really great what they're doing, honestly.
Well, and that's the thing is that one of the reasons why I started doing the YouTube stuff beyond the Pub Stars thing was that it dawned on me that no one on YouTube was really doing anything with competitive Battlefield, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. And take in mind, there were other guys who could have done it. I mean, Rival X Factor came from Team Rival. He could have done it. Well, actually, he couldn't have done it, and here's why he couldn't have done it. Rival at the time had a embargo on posting their matches on YouTube, which is why Rival X Factor initially never posted any Rival match videos.
Was that not a requirement of BFBC2 to post your gameplay?
So for some leagues and ladders, yes. Rival never competed in any of those leagues or ladders. And further, Rival had a policy at the time that said, for the sake of making sure that our strats never get compromised, we have a policy of not letting any of our matches posted on YouTube until a year after they've been played. And so X Factor had a lot of successes in his YouTube channel, continued to do so, but he couldn't even post the videos. And so it really frustrated me. And so it wasn't X Factor made that decision, it was the team. But it really frustrated me that we had a number of YouTubers that came from competitive gaming teams and weren't posting anything. To me,
have to pixelate all of his gameplay.
To me, the biggest problem is not about the question of whether or not people want to play competitive Battlefield. To me, the issue is people don't even know it exists. People don't even know that it's an option in the scheme of things. It'd be like saying, did you know that there's a support class that you can play?
Everyone knows about the support class. And
well, but I'm saying, I mean, if I told you there was a fifth class that no one knew about, that it was the I don't know, the
base class.
Yeah, the chef class where you can cook meals or something.
Or it's just knifing only. That's all it is. You just get a giant knife.
Or a minstrel class where you can just play different music, or something like that. I mean, people would they'd say in disbelief, I don't believe you that this class exists. And then when they see it, they'd be like, wow, I want to try this class out. To me, that's what competitive Battlefield's about for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know that it exists, or worse. And this is just as bad. They equate competitive Battlefield with some of these sort of exclusive competitive game modes like 5v5 domination or 5v5 diffuse, which aren't bad game modes and certainly are ones that attract sort of the old school traditional CS:GO kind of player, but they're not representative of Battlefield. They're not representative of what people are used to playing and experiencing when they play Battlefield. It does not meet up with their expectations of what it means for most people to be a Battlefield player. Where are the jets? Where are the helicopters? What do you mean there's no recon class? What do you mean I can't even use a tug? I can't use a tug in this band? Can't have those kinds of constraints. That actually is just as bad as just telling them it doesn't even exist.
So you're saying in the competitive world there are those constraints that they're not used to?
Yes, and that's bad. But take in mind, competitive isn't just about those 2 game modes.
Yes.
In my opinion, competitive game modes include larger ones like 8s and 10s, but can also include things like 32 straight 2s. And some of the purists will say, no, 32 straight 2 is not competitive. Too many variables, too many people, too many values.
I don't know. If anyone watched that USA versus Europe thing and didn't come away with a smile on their face, I don't know what's wrong with you. That was awesome. I watched that and it was fantastic. And that's what I think BF4 gaming can be if more people get into it.
Yes. And so that is where it gets really exciting, is that even though that may not be the most competitive game mode from a purist perspective, that's okay. If people even get interested in playing 32s, and if they come to the conclusion after they play so many matches that that this is too many people and there's too many variables, and I want to try something a bit smaller, that's okay. Then we've done our jobs. Because it's now 32 is too crazy, I don't want to play it. It's, I want to continue to play competitive. I see the value of playing in organized competitive games, and I want to continue to pursue that, albeit at a smaller venue. That's okay with me.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Daskro, for taking the time to do this interview today. I hope this interview raises the awareness that competitive gaming actually exists, and we get more people to your channel. I'd like to thank you for sitting down with me, and until next time.
Thank you much.
I hope you enjoyed this entire interview, guys. Daskro is a fantastic guy, super down to earth, very nice, very cordial to talk to, really easy to get to know, and just like I said, overall great guy. Go over, subscribe to his channel. If you want to see more of these interviews, more of these things are coming. I'm going to be interviewing lots and lots of the top Battlefield 4 guys, picking their minds, and overall just trying to figure out what they do that makes them a good player, how they became a good player, in the end to try to make you better players, the Battlefield 4 community. That is my goal with this series, is to try to help you guys out, try to help the Battlefield 4 community out by picking these guys' minds so you can get their little pro tips that I maybe not cover on my channel, and you can use them in your gameplay. And as always, all the proceeds are being donated to the MDA, like I said at the beginning of the video, and again, I will put another link right here so you can see why they're being donated. Please go hit that subscribe button on Daskro's channel. He deserves more subscribers than he has. As I said before, if there's anybody who deserves 100,000+ subscribers, it's Daskro, for the amount of work he puts into this community. And hit the subscribe button on my channel if you want to see further interviews with great Battlefield 4 players and personalities. And until next time, guys, my name is Noodle, and always remember, use a noodle.